Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dirty Gaming and the next episode of the Zero to Hero Tornado Shot playthrough. When we last left off, we'd just killed the two pinnacle bosses to get the Voidstones, and we're sitting at Atlas completion of 82, which is not particularly high. So before we think about getting visions of grandeur and earning lots of currency, we really need to get our Atlas more filled out. So because of that, I've gone Wandering Path, I've respec'd some of the major nodes, and then we're going to go out and we're going to get some more connected map nodes to at least get that to 100%. Then we'll start filling out the duplication nodes. So we're going to take any random chance nodes. It doesn't really matter, just to see what we get to. And we're now at 80. So we've still got some more respec points. So for now, we're going to go out of these nodes. They will come in handy later on if we alter farm. But for now, they don't really serve much of a purpose. So we're going to go down and get more connected map nodes. We're now at 88%. So we need 3 more and we have 3 points. We obviously do want duplicate maps as well, but that can come later on. So for now, we're just going to go down and get these 2 nodes here and then just take this node. So now we've filled out 100% chance for 1 monster in the map to drop a connector map. This should help massively. We're going for Atlas completion because we are very short. So the one thing to be careful of is don't put your Voidstones in if you're still doing your Atlas completion, because it's going to change the tiers of stuff. So we have Caldera here as a tier 7 and we have Wasteland as a tier 8. If we would stick both our Voidstones in, because it gives us a chance to get higher map drops, we can see here that Caldera's gone to 14, but ours isn't a 14, it's tier 7, and the connector map is tier 15. Once you get higher up, it doesn't matter as much. But when you're filling out this lower to middle Atlas completion, just keep your Voidstones in there for now. We really don't need to use them. So we are going to go and do the Atlas completion. I'm not going to show many highlights of this because it's something that everyone's done and probably sick of, because it's not exactly a fun part to do. And then we'll come back once we've got enough completion to build some sort of first Atlas tree and we can start earning some currency. So I'll be back with you shortly. So while some of the Atlas completion plays out in the background, I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I wanted to do this episode and what I wanted to get across to people. So this episode was all about getting a build together that can farm scoured T16 maps, with the idea that I start with a simple alter Jungle Valley farm, and then eventually we can maybe add in Delirium mirrors. Once I get all my non-unique map completion done, we should have enough points to do that. Now, at this stage in the league, starting fresh, there are a couple of dilemmas that I need to think about, but it's probably for next episode. First is, when do we do Maven and Uber order for the next 2 Voidstones? Now, I know I could buy carries, but I don't really want to do that as part of this playthrough. The main issue at this stage of the league is the materials cost around 10 to 11 divines to even get those encounters done. And at the moment, my build doesn't even cost that. So I can't justify doing that yet. So I have to look at what point, if at all, we do that. And then after that, it's how do we upgrade the build from here? Do we stick with Hiris and just farm a Headhunter since they're crazy cheap this league? Or do we farm for Omni and all the associated gear needed to get that going? These are things I definitely need to think about, and think about the solution quickly, because with the Atlas tree we end up at the end of the video, we should comfortably be clearing 10 divines plus profit per hour. So it's not going to be long before we've got the currency to do one of those 2 options. So I need to make a decision as to what that's going to be. So now it's time to upgrade the bow and the quiver. And I wanted a proper bow upgrade. I didn't really want to spend any more than 3 to 4 divines. And what I was looking for was 950 plus LE DPS, crit chance and attack speed on either a spine bow or an ivory bow base. I found a 5-link bow for 3 divines, which would work perfectly. It also allows me to add an extra link into my ballista setup. I also at this stage needed a new quiver, but at the time there weren't any available for what I thought was a good price, and I didn't really need it to be able to start the next step of my farm. So I went ahead and started farming Jungle Valleys. So while we're on that topic, let's talk about how to get your first farm going. So setting up your first farm, I wanted to do Jungle Valley to Mesa. Jungle Valley because I can get decent altars, Mesa because the boss is easy to kill. It's good for boss rushing when we do get our map supply up. So really, I just needed to favorite both of these. And then once I had 2 to 3 of either of those map drop, that's enough to sustain. If you want to see more detail about how to do this sort of strat, I've linked my Headhunter farming video in the description. This is kind of the strategy that I use for that. So let's say, for example, we drop 2 Jungle Valleys. We're putting both our Voidstones in. We're then going to put all of our favorites that we've got left as Mesa, and then we're going to run Jungle Valley. You've got 100% chance for a connecting map to drop, and about 40% chance or just less for them to be duplicated. So all you do is you run your Jungle Valleys, you drop Mesas, you then favorite Jungle Valley, you run your Mesas, and eventually over time you start building up a big map pool. And it didn't take me long to get 10, 15, 20 maps, and once you've got that amount, you're never going to run out. And then from here, I just wanted to be as quick as possible. So in Jungle Valley, if I didn't get any good altars and I got halfway through the map and I dropped my Mesa, I was leaving. I got my connected map. That's all I care about. I got progress to the Exarch Invitation, which are 2.5 to 3 divines. So then I'll do that for all my Jungle Valleys. I'll then go to Mesa. I'll kill the boss straight away so that it just starts spawning minion altars. And then I'll go around the map until I get 1 or 2 Jungle Valley maps drop. I'll portal out, go back in, run the next Mesa, and you rinse and repeat. And that's essentially it. The more maps you get, the quicker you're going to be, and the less diligent you have to be about making sure you get a map to drop before you leave. And eventually you're going to be doing these maps in well under a minute on average, and it's 28 maps to get a 2.5 to 3 divine invitation, along with other stuff you're going to drop along the way. Once I'd done that and I completed my first Exarch cycle, it was then time to go and get a Quiver. This time there was one available that I liked the look of for 1 divines, and then we went ahead and purchased it. In terms of how I found that upgrade, I actually used the function in POB to find it. So what you can do in POB when you've got all your gear set up and you've got all your items is you can go into trade for these items. You can set what limit you want the price to be, and you're going to basically search for quivers by DPS. It will give you a trade link that you can just control and click to open a window, and then you just sort by descending in terms of the score that it gives the items, and that will basically give you the quivers in DPS order from the best DPS to the lowest DPS. You just find one that suits your price and you buy that item, and that's what I did for my quiver, and it gave me a big DPS increase. So once I had the quiver, it is then a case of farming for 1 to 2 hours to get some currency in this very simple Atlas setup. Once I got enough currency and I felt that this was working, I'd then go and finish my map completion and then add some Delirium nodes. If you're interested in the Delirium strat, I've linked another video in the description that covers this strategy in detail. It works really well and you can make an absolute ton of currency. So that was kind of it for what I wanted to do. I just wanted to really grind some currency, get those first 2 upgrades, which we've done. And then at the end of the video, we'll look at what currency we're sitting at. And then as we go into the next episode, we're then going to look at how we want to upgrade the build. Do we go Omni? Do we go Headhunter? Do we do neither? Do we go for Mage Blood? What way do we want to progress that we can earn decent enough currency to get a build that's then going to be able to go and do much more varied mechanics? Because at the moment, if you just did this the whole time, yes, it's easy. Yes, it's profitable, but you might get a little bit bored. So one thing that I didn't want to do was build up too much loot that it become a pain to sell or too long. I wanted to stay as liquid as possible in terms of actual currency. So I was constantly selling items to keep the money rolling in. I did want stuff to sell fairly quickly, so I was pricing as cheap as I needed to, and if stuff didn't sell within 5 to 10 minutes, I would lower the price a little bit until it sold. This is not something I'm necessarily going to need to do later on when I've got stuff to sell in bulk. But when you're only selling individual items, so let's say you've got 1 Conqueror fragment or 1 Conqueror map or 1 invitation, you sometimes have to price stuff on the cheaper side to get it to sell. So whilst I was doing this, I was also finishing all of my non-unique maps so that I could add Delhi as mentioned earlier in the video. I was also selling Chaos Swords for Divines when I felt like I had more Chaos than I was ever going to need. So for anyone that's always had issues buying Divine Orbs for Chaos, the much easier way to do it is just sell your Chaos for Divines. You can go on POE Awaken Trade, see what that average is selling for. You just price it. If you priced it competitively, you'll get whispers almost immediately. And it's so much easier and hassle-free than actually trying to buy Divines on the trade site and having the first 5 or 10 people you whisper just ignore you or be price fixers. And that brings us nicely on to where we are now. 16 hours, 20 minutes in. I'll go through the gear and the skill tree and also the stash. And then what we'll do is farm for a couple more hours. I won't show any highlights because it's very boring. See what we end on at the end of the video. And then that leads us nicely on to the next episode where we're going to be able to actually put a proper build together. Whereas at the moment, it's really just stuff thrown together to be able to handle some fairly easy content. Now, I am on holiday for 4 to 5 days. So next episode is probably not going to come out for probably 5 or 6 days. But as I say, it is going to be a jam-packed episode where we upgrade the build to something totally different than it is at the moment. So in terms of currency, I'm sitting on 11 Divines and 450 Chaos. I have maybe 1 map here to sell that I might need to reprice because this was last night that I put this up for sale. And then we've got a smattering of exotic currency. But overall, stash is looking pretty decent. And we now have our Atlas tree set up. So we've got more chance to drop invitations. We've got all of our Deli nodes, and then we have our connected map drops, some pack size, and just generally a decent tree to go and farm some maps very quickly and turn over some nice currency. So the character is now at level 93. I've probably died 3 times maybe doing this map farm, and they're all deaths that were avoidable. They were my fault, just not paying attention. But doing this sort of mapping strategy, you really don't need many defenses on your tornado shot because you can be killing stuff fairly quickly. We can't take a fizz hit, but everything else we mitigate fairly comfortably. In terms of upgrades, we added the Hiri's Ire, we added the new bow, we added the new quiver, and then we just put some proper implicits on the gloves. So Intimidate probably isn't the best one, but it's something, and I didn't want to keep rolling because these embers are actually quite expensive if you go any higher than lesser. We've rolled action speed on the boots, and then that's kind of it. In terms of the 6-link, we've changed it up again because we managed to get 2 green, 2 blue, 2 red. So I've gone to what I prefer for a 6-link tornado shot, which is tornado shot, GMP, inspiration, LE damage with attacks, crit damage, and Trinity. We've got a 5-link ballista of inspiration support, focus ballista, faster attacks, added cold, artillery ballista. This is not optimal, but I hardly ever use it, so it doesn't really matter at this stage. And then we have flame dash, haste, and grace. I used a Varl on my haste and grace to hopefully turn one of them into a Varl skill. Grace ended up being the one we got, so we've now got Varl Grace into the build as well for a bit more defenses. In the helmet, we've got our mark on hit, sniper's mark, life tap. And then in the boots, we have our Mana Forged arrows set up to get frenzy charges and power charges. So it's Mana Forged, frenzy, power charge on crit, and life tap. And that's kind of it. It's just as simple as that. The POB will have obviously the full gear and the skill setup anyway. In terms of the tree, I've actually changed it up a little bit and actually gone up here because you get decent attributes, decent life, and crit. I think this tree works pretty well. Next episode, we'll probably drop the Lion Eyes and go to a cluster jewel setup because I think you can get more out of it. But that's something that we'll cover off in the next episode. So that's kind of it for where we are at the moment. I'm just going to go and farm for, let's say, 2 more hours. We'll take the timer up to 18:20. I'll sell the loot, and then I'll come back very quickly just to show the currency that we earn in that time. And then that leads us nicely on to the next video. I actually decided I need my last charm slot. So we've got quite a few T14 to T16 maps that I don't want to run. So let's just cycle through them, find the king and a miss, and get that last slot unlocked. Tactics for this, just so I'm not wasting time and I'm earning currency as well, is we kill a few mobs until I can see that the influencer's prot for the map. I'm then going into the wildwood, looking for king and the miss. That's all I'm looking for. We do come across some things like, you know, Beyond Harvest, which will be a bit of currency over time as it adds up. But that's all we were looking to do. Now, I did find him fairly quickly, and for the first time, I failed the encounter. I got a setup that I saw Ben get very early on, and that is the only time I've ever seen a layout where I didn't understand where to go. So I thought I'd try and spend a little bit of time figuring it out because I knew from the layout I wasn't going to find the exit. I couldn't exactly figure out why this is broken, but I think what is happening is I think the portal is blocked off when it isn't meant to be. So what happens is all the wisps send you towards where the portal should be, but there's actually a wall blocking you from getting there. So there's an alternative route to getting there. Unfortunately, with the wisps leading you the wrong way, you then have to backtrack a long way, and eventually you will end up getting overwhelmed with the bugs that give the degen. I don't know 100% that's what it is, but I looked at every single wisp that I came across, and they all led to the same direction. They all led to a little cut through that you could go through, and then I could see where the exit was. I just couldn't get there. So then by the time I backtracked to find the right way, I died. And I don't think this means you don't follow the wisps. I just think this means this is a bugged encounter. So we died, which was a bummer. So then we had to go and find him again, which we did. So all in all, it took an hour to get that King of the Mist unlocked, but it wasn't wasted. We had an invitation drop, and I'm well on the way to getting a second one. So even though it was time where I'm not farming and it is very, very boring just trying to find him, that's around 3 to 3.5 divines I've made just by finding him. We didn't get anything good drop. He dropped the body armor. But at least I'm now in a position at the beginning of the next episode, or even this episode, to buy a final charm to get us going. And these are still very, very budget charms at the moment. Next episode, we're going to look at upgrading those as well, because we'll certainly have the currency to do so. So I farmed to just under 18 hours played when I completed my next invitation run. So I decided to price check the daily orbs and sell most of the stuff I've collected, including the 3 invitations. And to my shock, daily orbs are 4 for a divine. Now I know divine prices have come down to under 200C, but that's still around 50 chaos per daily orb. and they sell pretty much instantly. Even if you go onto TFT, the want to buy channel has people wanting to buy 4 for a divine. So that means probably not long before we see 3 orbs for 1 divine, which is absolutely nuts considering how easy they are to farm. So I'm now sitting on around 13 divines of currency, but we've only just started farming. This will give us enough to either transition to Omni, because Omniscience is only about 5 divines, or we can farm for another 2 hours and just get a Headhunter, or farm for 5 to 6 and get a Mage Blood. Decisions need to be made in the next episode. It does almost feel broken, in a way wrong, that you can farm the pinnacle items in the game in such a short period of time, and I doubt we'll ever see an economy like this again in the future, so certainly make the most of it. If you're someone who's never had a Headhunter, never had a Mage Blood, never had any item in the game, this is the league to do it, so get farming. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, take care, and see you in the next one.